Hello everyone and welcome to this screencast number 4 about biodiversity data publishing. In the last screencast, we have published a metadata only dataset, a dataset that contains no actual biodiversity data. Now we'll go one step further and we will add some real biodiversity data to this resource. Let's go. We need two things to perform this data publication. We need, of course, access to the IPT. Here is the IPT instance we used previously to publish our metadata in the last screencasts. And we need some biodiversity data to publish. So I have obtained such data in an Excel sheet, and I suggest that we review it quickly together. If I look at this Excel sheet, I can see we have several columns with a title each time, and we also have a large number of rows. Let's check. Yep, in this case we have 5,000 rows. Let's check the kind of data we have in each column, so we are a bit more familiar with our data. I have an identifier, like a unique number, collection code, the code of some institution, another identifier, information about life stage, about associated taxa, like for example, you see that there's a specimen and plant specimen and there's another known insect on it. We have a date, some field notes, some location information like country code, locality or city name, latitude, longitude, uncertainty about this lat long, and also some taxonomic information, the name of someone who made an identification, a scientific name, the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, and also, for example, taxonomic status. So, to me, if we go back to the first screencast about GBIF data publication, this looks exactly like occurrences. It seems we are describing the occurrence of an individual organism. We have an identification for this organism. We have a location of where that happened. We have a date. So that really looks like an occurrence. So we know that we will have to publish an occurrence datasets. Okay, back to my IPT instance, and if I go on the Manage Resource tab, I can find my Belgian coccinellidae dataset, the one we created before. And what I want to do is to edit that one, to add the data from my Excel sheet. So I will click on it to change it. And we are back to this main data resource management page that we've seen before. The first thing I'll do is to change the dataset type, because currently it's a metadata only dataset, and we have discovered that it will actually become an occurrence datasets. So I go on the metadata settings, and here on the basic metadata page in the first section, I have a type where I can configure the dataset type, which is currently metadata only. I will select that it's an occurrence. And now I can save my metadata to keep the change. And it's saved. Let's go back again to the main resource configuration page. And here, after I made this change, in fact, you can notice that new options appeared, because there is now a source data block here and another one called Darwin Core mapping. And those two sections are there to configure the data itself. So that's why they were not needed for a metadata only dataset, but now they are, and we will configure them. The first one is called source data, and it's basically to tell the IPT where it can find your data. So here in an Excel sheet. And the second one, Darwin Core mapping, will tell the IPT how to interpret and how to understand the data in this Excel sheet itself. So first we connect the file. I will click on the choose file button here in source data, and I will select my data file, the Excel sheet we just saw before. It's called Ladybird. Click the open, and then I have to click a second time on a button called add. The file is transferring to the IPT. And now I am on a new configuration page. And you can configure different settings related to your source data file. And you can also have a quick preview to check if those settings are reasonable. So here, a first one, which is quite interesting, is the number of header rows. Let's have a look again on the Excel sheet. And we can see that is on this sheet, the first row is not actual data, but is column titles or headers for those columns. So this file actually contains one line. The first line is headers, and the IPT is configured for 0 header rows, which isn't correct, of course. So I will just put the value 1 here. I have another interesting settings, which is the selected worksheet, because in Excel you can have different sheets containing data, and when you connect it to the IPT, you have to tell the IPT in which your data should be loaded. But here we have only one sheet, so it should be good. We've configured the number of header, the worksheet, so it's time to have a look if the IPT understand our file correctly. So I click first on the Analyze button, and then on the little eye that will display a preview of the results. I can see that my header are well recognized here at the top of the table. And I can see the data itself seems correctly discovered. For example, they are well aligned. Under scientific name, I can see that I have a plausible scientific name, and I have something that looks like coordinates under the lat/lon columns. So the data source seems well configured for me. I will now click on the Save button to save this configuration. And now I am back again on the main resource configuration page, and there's only one thing to configure, and it's happening here in the Darwin Core mapping section. The idea behind the mapping step is to make an association, or a link if you want, between the way you name things in your database, in your data source, and in the Darwin Core standard. Let's take an example. Maybe if you're working in a French institute, your scientific names are kept in a column called non-scientific in French. But if you look into the Darwin Core standard, the scientific name should be under a scientific name with a specific spelling term. And so we have to tell the IPT what's the connection between those two things. And only after it's done, it will be able to deal with our custom format, and at the same time to harmonize it, to make it work with other datasets from other sources. The first thing we have to do here is to select the subtype of Darwin Core we want to map our data to. We have Darwin Core occurrence, taxon, or event, and basically those three types correspond to the different type of data sets you want to publish. Here we want to publish occurrence data, so we will simply select Darwin Core occurrence and click on the Add button. On this page, we can now select which source of data will be mapped to our occurrence core. We only have one source of data so far. It's the ladybirds file. So we will let the selection and click Save again. And now we are on the main mapping page. We have a very long list of all the available Darwin Core terms here. And as this list is very long, they are grouped by section. For example, I have a shortcut here on the left called location. If I click on it, I directly jump to the various location related Darwin Core fields. I can see here water body, island, country, for example, those kind of things. There's also some help embedded. For example, here I have the decimal latitude field, and just on the left there is an information symbol. If I click on it, I will have some help describing what's expected in this field, and also an example here. And basically, it says we should put under this term the geographic latitude in decimal degrees. Right to the Darwin Core term, I have a selection list, and basically, if we open this selection list, we'll see the list of our columns in our Excel sheet. And that's how we do the mapping actually, because that definition of decimal latitude seems to match perfectly what's inside our lat column here. We can see that it's visibly some decimal latitude. So in the IPT, by going to the decimal latitude field and selecting the lat column in the selection box, we will just say to the IPT, your decimal latitude term will take a source in our lat column. And that's it. We just mapped our first field. As we are here, I can already see that the next one is decimal longitude with a very similar definition, but for the longitude, of course. And I can see a lon field with the longitude in my source file, so I can map it just the same and say decimal longitude is coming from the lon column. So I mapped two fields now, and I have here at the bottom a save button. I will click it just to ensure that my two first fields are already mapped. That's just what we do when we're doing the mapping, taking each field in our source file, finding the matching Darwin Core term, and connecting the two using the list box. Now I will show you a few more things. Here, for example, the IPT has a warning message saying basis of record is required. And in fact, basis of the record is one of those Darwin Core terms here. And it's a mandatory field. So for each occurrence dataset, you have to configure the basis of record. If we check at the definition, it's basically the nature of the data record. Is it, for example, a fossil? Is it a living specimen observed? Is it a preserved specimen, or something like that? But here I have a problem. My problem is if I check in my fields in my Excel, I don't really have this information. I know that all the data consists of human observation, but it's not in the Excel sheet because it's a common value for all the different rows, not in the source file. So here I have another option of the IPT. I will not use the first list box, which is about selecting a column in the source file, but I will use the second one. And the second one is used for exactly for that. It's used to force a value for all rows. So here I can select human observation, and that means that in my published data, all fields will have human observation as basis of record, even if that initial data was not in my Excel sheet. Let's save that. The warning message disappeared because now I am providing a value as expected. Another thing I want to show you is at the very bottom of the page, we have a section called unmapped columns. And that's basically the IPT telling us that there are some data in our source file which is not mapped. And if it's not mapped, that data will not be published. So there are two cases here. Maybe it's something we want. We've deliberately chosen to not publish the data in identificator. It's a perfectly valid case. When you upload a file to the IPT, you don't have to publish every column. You can filter simply by doing that, by avoiding mapping different columns. But maybe it's also because maybe you want to publish this column and it's just something you've forgotten. So in that case, you have this reminder telling you don't forget to map this identificator column, for example. One more thing again. We have mapped only 2 columns manually previously, but the IPT told us that unmapped columns, there are only 2 unmapped columns, which seems a bit strange, but it's not. Let me show you. For example, here I have a Darwin Core term called kingdom. But in my source Excel file, I also have a column called kingdom with just the same spelling as the Darwin Core standard. And in that case, the IPT has a feature called auto mapping. And we can see that indeed it already automatically selected the kingdom column to match the kingdom Darwin Core term. That's something quite useful because if you upload to the IPT an Excel file with all column names already as Darwin Core, you don't have to do anything at the mapping stage because the auto mapping feature will do that and will map each field. So we saw different things here. We saw how to manually map a few fields like latitude and longitude. We saw also how to use the auto mapping, so we don't have to do anything if the column names are already Darwin Core. And we also saw how to force a value for basis of record that was not in the initial source file. So that's really the basics of the mapping. And we can say that now this mapping is done for this dataset. I will click save again just to be sure. I will go back one more time to the dataset management page. IPT is a bit slow. And we can check that we now have some source data. We have connected the Excel sheet. We have added a mapping between this Excel sheet and Darwin Core occurrence. We still have the resource metadata that were entered in the previous screencast. So what we can simply do is do again the publish cycle. So we will first click publish to create a new version of the resource in the IPT. I have some messages. And I have a success message saying published version 1.2 of Belgian ladybirds finished. So we can go back to the resource page and we check, but it's still public and registered because we did that in the previous screencasts. So now our dataset is republished. And not only with the metadata, but also with occurrence data attached. So, thank you.